Dylan had an ordinary family. His mom and dad loved him as much as he loved them. Together, they went to the movies and the theater, to the skating rink, and vacationed at the sea. They walked on the hot white sand. His father taught Dylan to swim. And then, the company where his father worked went bankrupt, and he lost his job and became addicted to alcohol. Every time he got drunk, he cursed the government, the president, and the laws. He blamed everyone but himself for his failures. When Dylan's mom, tired of her husband's drunken talk, would ask him to go to bed, he would attack her with his fists. She would take Dylan to his room, but the child would hear everything, shuddering at the screams and the sound of breaking dishes. What could he do? When his father finally fell asleep, filling the room with snoring and the sour smell of booze, his mother would come to Dylan's room, often falling asleep with her son on his narrow bed. Dylan noticed the bruises on her arms, and even on her face. In the morning, his father would apologize and promise that he wouldn't drink or hurt his wife again. In the morning, Mom would quietly go to work. After waking up, his father would go to look for a job. As he said, Dylan stayed alone, cooked breakfast himself, ate, and then went to school. In the evening, everything started all over again. Did your father get drunk and out of control again last night? The next door neighbor, Rose, asked. Yes, Dylan nodded. Why doesn't your mother call the police? I have to go. I'm late for school. Dylan hurried away. Okay, the neighbor sighed as she looked at him. When Dylan came home from school, his mother was in the kitchen cooking dinner. His father wasn't home, which made Dylan happy. He sat down at the table and began to tell the school news. Then he said it was better without his father, and it would be good if he never came home again. His mom looked at him reproachfully. He's going through a difficult time, Dylan. He'll get a job and everything will be back to normal. But that day his father came home, slammed the front door loudly, dropping something and cursing. Mom shivered, peering out of the kitchen. Go to your room, she said quietly, pushing Dylan in the back. He was sitting in his room listening. But today everything was different. It was quieter. Then Mom shrieked, and something heavy fell to the floor. Dylan stepped cautiously out of his hiding place and peered into the kitchen. His father was standing there, looking at his mom lying on the floor. Dylan shrieked. His father turned his head and looked at him with fierce eyes. Dylan, he said. Dylan rushed out of the apartment and rang the neighbor's doorbell. He was trembling. Rose didn't understand anything of his explanation, but called the police and an ambulance. They arrived almost simultaneously. The police took his father away, and an ambulance took his mother to the hospital. Dylan spent that night at his neighbor's apartment. In the morning, he and Rose went to his mom. His mom was lying on the bed, with lots of tubes and sensors on her body. She was asleep, and she didn't wake up, even when Dylan called out to her and pulled on her hand. The doctor took Rose out into the hallway, and Dylan stayed with his mom. He kept trying to wake her up. He got bored. Rose wasn't coming back, so Dylan went looking for her. One of the doors to the hallway was ajar. Dylan heard the doctor telling someone that she's in a coma and unlikely to wake up. But you have to believe. He got scared and ran out of the hospital. Rose found him on a bench in the hospital park. He cried all the way home. Rose was losing patience trying to calm him down. At home, she asked if he and his mother had any relatives. My grandma lives in the village, Dylan replied. How far is it from here? An hour and a half by bus. Then another 3 kilometers on foot. Do you remember the way? Do you think I'm a little kid? Of course, I remember. Dylan felt offended. I'll take you to your grandma's tomorrow morning, Rose said. But in the morning, she got a call from her friend's daughter asking her to come over urgently. She said her mom was dying. Rose was confused. I'll walk you to the bus station, but you'll go to the village alone. I'm sorry I can't go with you. You're already a big boy. At the bus station, she asked the bus driver to keep an eye on Dylan. From the monotonous roar of the engine and fatigue, Dylan fell asleep quickly. He woke up when someone was tugging on his shoulder. "Hey, kiddo, wake up. It's the last stop," a woman sitting next to him said. Dylan stood up and walked towards the exit. "Hey boy, go to the village with the others. Just follow them so you don't get lost. I can't walk you home. I have to go back," the driver told him. Dylan nodded and got off the bus. The other people's houses were closer, almost near the bus stop, so the boy walked alone to the village. It was scary, but the sun was shining, and the fallen leaves rustled cozily under his feet. Dylan told himself that he was already a big boy, that he knew the way to the village, and that the main thing was not to turn around. So he kept walking, singing his favorite song. They used to sing it together with his mom. Now he would pass a small village, then a larger one with a store, and his grandmother's village would be next. When the first village was behind him, someone called out to him with a whistle. Dylan stopped and looked around. There were two teenagers sitting on a fallen tree. "Who are you? Who are you visiting here?" the taller boy asked. "I haven't seen you here before." "I'm going to my grandmother's," Dylan said. "Don't you go to school?" "I do. I just have to go to my granny today." Dylan didn't bother to explain. "Do you have any cigarettes?" the other one asked in a ringing voice. "Mom said if you start smoking early, you'll be a dwarf," Dylan said. The teenagers laughed loudly. "Oh, really? Your mommy told you that? What else did she tell you? What do you have in there?" the older one asked and quickly took the backpack away from Dylan. "Give it back." Dylan screamed and tried to grab his backpack, but the teenager pushed him away and started rummaging through the backpack. The mean teenager threw Dylan's clothes, a book, and a bag of sandwiches on the grass. "When my mother used to bring home her lovers, she'd ask me to take her work for 2 hours. I guess 2 hours wasn't enough for your mom, so she sent you to your grandma's," the older one said, and both teenagers cursed and started laughing. Dylan couldn't stand it, because his mom was in the hospital, and he didn't even know if she would survive. He tried to attack them, but the forces were unequal. The older teenager pushed Dylan painfully in the chest, and the other one tripped him up from behind. Dylan fell to the grass and hit his back severely. There were rocks and dry tree branches lying in the grass. "Did mommy give you some money?" "I'm sure she did." "Show me." The older teenager raised his voice. From here, from behind the bushes and trees still covered with thick foliage, there were no houses in sight. No one would come to his rescue. Dylan tried to get up, but the older teenager threw the backpack at the boy, kicked him again, and pressed him to the ground. The second teenager rummaged through Dylan's pockets. $50. "You are a rich boy." He happily looked at the banknote he had found. When the teenagers laughed, Dylan finally stood up. "Give it back." The boy attacked them, trying to get the money back. A fight broke out, but there was no way the little boy could defeat the two angry teenagers, who were much stronger than he was. He clutched at the sleeve of the older boy's jacket, but that easily threw Dylan off. Dylan fell, hitting the back of his head against the edge of a fallen tree. "Hey kiddo, get up." Some elderly woman bent over him. "Those bastards beat you so badly. What's your name? You don't look like a local. Are you visiting someone?" the elderly woman asked. Dylan stood up, grimacing in pain, unable to remember why he had come here, or his name, or anything. The torn t-shirt lay on the grass, but the backpack and jacket were gone. "Let's go to my house. You can wash your face there, and then you will tell me everything," the elderly woman said, taking Dylan to her house. Dylan wanted to cry from helplessness and pain. The woman gave him a towel. The boy washed his face. Then she fed him, listened to him, and said she would go to the head of the village for advice on what to do next. She locked Dylan in her house so he wouldn't run away. But he wasn't going to run away. He had nowhere to run. He couldn't remember his name or where he was going. The elderly woman came back with a skinny man. He scratched the back of his head and said, "Let him stay at your place today, and tomorrow the police officer will come. Let him sort it out," he said. "The boy will stay at my place for now." In the meantime, please talk to those bullies. I guess it was Mike and his buddies who attacked the boy. Don't tell me what to do. I know my job pretty well, the man said sternly, and left. And Dylan finally cried. Don't cry. The head of our village is strict but fair. He will help. The next day, he really brought a young police officer. They asked numerous questions, but what could he say? The boy's memory has not returned. The policeman left, promising to ask all the people in the nearby villages and find the child's relatives. He even took Dylan's picture so he could show it to everyone. Dylan's face looked terrible in the photo. It was swollen with bruises and scratches. When the policeman came to Dylan's grandmother, she had gone somewhere and didn't see the photo. And anyway, she would hardly recognize her grandson because of bruises. The policeman took him to the district police station, and from there, he went to the orphanage. I'm sorry. No one recognized you. No one was looking for you, and no one had reported a child missing. You can't live alone, and you can't stay in this village either, so you'll be sent to an orphanage soon. If your parents are looking for you, we'll let them know where you are. Dylan didn't care. At the orphanage, the children realized that he didn't remember anything and started abusing him. The nights were the worst. They covered him with a blanket and beat him. He stopped sleeping, expecting to be attacked, and often attacked first, for which he was punished by the caregivers. The other children began to call him psycho. Teachers and caregivers labeled him a bully, even though he studied well. He didn't remember anything about himself, but he remembered the school program perfectly, and his academic results were excellent. He was named Alex because of a song he often hummed. He felt it wasn't his real name, but others had to address him somehow. A few months passed. On Christmas Eve, sponsors came to the orphanage and brought some gifts. The caregivers took away the clothes and toys right away and gave the kids some chocolates. Alex climbed under the stairs and ate everything quickly so that other children would not have time to take it away. Then he felt unwell. The caregiver found the boy and scolded him. The concert is about to start. You have to sing a song. You'll disgrace the whole orphanage. She took him to the dining room, gave him a cup of strong tea, and he felt better. The music teacher discovered the boy's musical talent. Let's choose a Christmas song, she said as she prepared for the concert, and offered several songs to choose from. But he flatly refused to sing anything but his favorite song. The head of the orphanage supported him. He sings it in a way that makes everyone want to cry. Even I can hardly hold back my tears every time. He'll impress the sponsors, win them over. Maybe they'll give us more money. It's time for renovations. The girls decorated the orphanage with garlands and paper snowflakes. There was a Christmas tree on the stage in the concert hall and another big one in the lobby. The caregivers dressed the children in colorful outfits and instructed them how to behave. Sponsors and guests were seated in the front rows of the concert hall. Children were reading poems, dancing, and singing from the stage. Then it was Alex's turn. He was very shy and even wanted to hide or run away. It was the boy's first time to sing in front of such a big crowd of people. Alex started to sing in a trembling, quiet voice, and it sounded very sad. Then his voice grew stronger, and by the last verse, caregivers and sponsors were wiping away their tears. When he finished the song, there was a storm of applause. Suddenly, the head of the orphanage entered the hall with some woman. She looked at Alex intently. Dylan, she shouted loudly and ran toward the stage. All the people froze, not understanding what was going on. The head of the orphanage ran after her, trying to hold the woman back. It's not Dylan. It's Alex, she said. He's a wild bully. But the woman wasn't listening and ran toward the stage. She stopped in front of Alex. Dylan, my dear boy, I've been looking for you for so long. I looked for you in all the hospitals and orphanages. I knew I would find you. She suddenly fell silent. You don't remember anything at all. I am your mom. Do you remember how you cut your leg with a shell at the sea? Or your little kitten? You cried when it ran away. When you were 5 years old, A dog bit you and you've been afraid of dogs ever since. All the girls sobbed, and all the boys looked on with envy. Is this really the real mother of a psycho? This bully is lucky. He'll be home soon. You scared the boy. You'd better leave. We have guests. And you're throwing a tantrum, interrupting the concert. The head of the orphanage spoke quietly, taking Dylan and the woman out of the concert hall. Dozens of looks followed them in total silence. That strange woman wouldn't let go of his hand. In the office, she began to prove that it was not Alex, but her son Dylan. She pointed to the birthmarks, the scars from falling off the bike. Dylan listened, and images from the past began to flash before his eyes. And then he remembered his mother lying in the hospital, with wires and sensors on her body. He remembered his father standing over her in the kitchen, and even the doctor's words. "Mom," he said timidly. He remembers. He remembers me. The woman hugged him tightly and began kissing his cheeks and forehead. Pictures from his former life flashed through Dylan's mind like a kaleidoscope. "Will you take me away from here?" "Sure." "Stop," the head of the orphanage said strictly. "I can't just give the child to a stranger. I'm not even sure you're his mother. I don't know where you've been all this time, why the boy was found on the street. You have to provide papers, and I need to call the police. I'm not leaving this place without him. I'm going to go to your sponsors now and tell them everything." Dylan's mom stood up resolutely from her chair, holding his hand tightly. "All right. After all, it's Christmas," the head of the orphanage said tiredly. "Here, fill out all this paperwork. I hope you are not an alcoholic. My husband hit me severely, and I was in a coma for a few days. Our neighbor sent him to his grandma's village, but he never made it there, and I've been looking for him this whole time," the mother told hurriedly and nervously. "All right. Write down your phone number, full name, and address so I know how to find you. I'll call the police and child welfare authorities tomorrow morning, and we'll sort everything out. I overheard your doctor telling Rose that you wouldn't survive." My silly little boy. He wasn't talking to Rose, and he wasn't talking about me. He was talking on the phone about another patient. His mom stroked his hair. "You know what we're going to do now? We're going to go to Grandma. She's waiting for us, and she's very worried. She was even in the hospital with a heart attack, but she's fine now. We'll decorate the Christmas tree and eat cherry pie. You loved cherry pies very much," Mom said when they came out of the orphanage. With each passing day, Dylan remembered more and more details. He remembered those bullies, too. It's okay. He'll get revenge on them for the fact that he had to live in the orphanage for 6 months, without his mom, under a false name, and endure beatings and insults. One day, he would come to his grandmother in the summer, find those guys, and take revenge. But for now, there was only one question on his mind. Would his father come back? "No. I divorced him. Don't be afraid. If he doesn't leave us alone, we'll move to another city," his mom reassured him. Dylan was walking, holding his mom's hand tightly, looking at her as if checking that she was he and she wouldn't disappear again, hoping that all the troubles were over. There is nothing worse than being left alone in a big scary world, without your mom, having lost your memory. After facing the real cruelty, it is difficult to remain the same weak boy. Suspicion, fear, anxiety, and despair settle in Dylan's heart for a long time. But a mother's love can save and warm even the most resentful heart. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Teenagers are even more cruel than children. They haven't gotten rid of their childhood cruelty, but they've already acquired adult cruelty, and they haven't learned how to hide that adult cruelty. Never tolerate cruelty. Fight it. Be brave. Enjoy your life. Love and take care of your children, because no one needs children as much as moms do.